Fear and loathing. It's what Donald Trump bet on in one of his most controversial ads of this presidential campaign. And looking at the results from Tuesday night, some people think it might have worked.
Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners.
Surgery.
For prisoners.
For prisoners. Every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access.
Hell no, I don't want my taxpayer dollars going to that.
Kamala supports transgender sex changes in jail with our money.
Kamala even supports letting biological men compete against our girls in their sports. Kamala is for they, them. President Trump is for you.
That was the ad, according to many people. That was a sleeper issue in this campaign. Julie?
You know, I have a house in Pennsylvania, and I saw that ad 24/7. And at the time, I thought to myself, you know, way to exploit a vulnerable community. I thought it was disgusting, and I still think it's disgusting. However, I do think Democrats have a very, very hard time communicating on not just this issue, but on a lot of issues with average voters. We just do. We have to acknowledge that we have a problem communicating. You know, the White House spent an awful lot of time. You talked about Abby Gate before this. They didn't know how to communicate their position. The Biden economy was a good economy. They didn't, you may disagree with me statistically, it was. They didn't communicate it, that it was getting better and better, right? And that they needed to see it through. They needed to communicate to people during these college protests, and I know there's a lot of hard feelings on both sides of the issue on the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, but when you have kids trashing college campuses and preventing other people from studying, if you're a parent, you look at that and you say, I just saved up hundreds of thousands of dollars or took out massive loans to send my kids to college, and they can't make it to class because then some administration can't keep their own students under control. And the White House doesn't have a viewpoint on this because they don't want to offend one segment or the other. Or to some extent, people putting pronouns after their names. Just call me by my pronoun. And by the way, if you call me by the wrong pronoun, I'll correct you and we'll move on. You don't have to virtue signal about everything. But they didn't do, you know, it's the constant virtue signaling, I think, that really alienates people. Because what most people care about is what they care about. They just want people to be authentic and take positions. And I think as Democrats, sometimes we are so busy trying to figure out how to appeal to Scott, because Scott lives in Kentucky, and Scott's a white man. And how do I speak to Scott? And I speak to Scott differently than I speak to Abby, than I speak to Julie. And the reality is, you know what I know about Scott? He's got kids who love Pokemon, and so do I. And sometimes those kids talk about Pokemon trading cards. We can talk about the same thing. We don't need to sit there and constantly try to segment how we talk to people. We don't have to look at focus groups at all times to figure it out. Common sense is common sense.
I love the spirit of what you're saying. The only difference is I think it's more than a communication problem. I think it's deeper. I think it's the soul of the Democratic Party. It's about the beliefs. It's about the values. It's not simply a comms problem.
Inclusive.
It's that why couldn't it's a courage problem too. It's a courage in standing up against the progressive wing of the party. Why can't any Democrat just say something simple like, of course, we have no problem after you're above 18, do what you want, live and let live. This is America. But below 18, if you can't get a tattoo, you also can't consort to hormone therapy.
That's not, listen.
Play whatever sport you want, but you can't
competing
play
with
against people that have a natural disadvantage against you.
But
this is common sense, and no Democrat can say this. That's deeper than a communication problem.
It's not common sense. It's not. I worked very, very hard for weeks, months in our local school board, and so many Americans know what this is like. We got thumped and threatened and beaten over trans kids using the bathroom. It was horrifying what my community went through. I mean, and what the trans kids community. We had a woman in the back who yelled, "You're brainwashed," to a person who identified as trans. She got elected to the board. We can't compete. You say we have to be better on messaging. Tell me what we're supposed to do when Donald Trump says boys are going to school and getting a surgery and coming home as girls. The fact that anybody would believe that is insane to me. But how do we
Let me just say this.
combat that? I don't know what to do.
One of the aspects of this.
We should be protecting vulnerable people, but we can't.
The issues underlying that are a whole discussion. But in this particular campaign, unless you live in one of these battleground states, you may not have known, if you heard Kamala Harris talking, that this was an issue that in October, according to the spending, constituted 21% of Republican ad spending in this election.
Which issue?
That ad and this issue of trans people And the response from the Democrats was nothing.
The ad-
Literally nothing.
I don't think this ad should be held up as a model for how to talk to people.
Oh, no. Oh,
And I feel like
Catherine,
that's sort of the sentence.
let me just be very clear. This ad, I'm not saying that this ad is the way to address the issue of trans people, who are people, by the way. And I'm not holding it up as a paragon of ads. I'm just saying the reporting is the Trump campaign ran this ad and their numbers came back and said this was the top ad for them. It worked the best out of all the things that they tried. And there was no response to it at all.
But there's a larger issue here, right? And the larger issue is this. The White House would constantly get into these little Twitter wars or little meme wars, for example, with Steve Doocy from Fox News, right? Constantly, they would try to own Steve Doocy from Fox News. Well, I'm sorry, who cares about Steve Doocy from Fox News? That's great for Steve Doocy, but the average American person doesn't know who he is. That's
On
what
the trans issue?
Hold on, no,
just
just
in
generally,
general, yeah.
generally. And what they do is they wasted time on that. They should have looked straight into the camera every single day and said, you know what, we just passed a bipartisan infrastructure bill, and in Northampton County, Pennsylvania, or in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, on Route 212, thanks to our bill, there's a pothole on Regalsville Road, and we filled it. That pothole that you've been riding on for the last 10 years, thanks to us, we filled it. Instead of that, they're talking about little memes with Steve I mean, again, the messaging was all over the place as opposed to laser focusing on their accomplishments. And I'm sorry to say, it was a huge missed opportunity. And you ask why Biden's numbers consistently went down. It's because nobody ever effectively communicated his accomplishments over and over and over and over again. And they should have, because they are vast. They are vast.
I think, I hate to let you guys in on a secret, but I will. The ad works not because of the trans issue. The ad works.
So Charlemagne.
The ad works because it communicates something about what this person as a politician would say yes to when it comes to either your tax dollars or doing something, in this case, for an inmate population. Well over half the country sits around all the time going, why is the government so focused on everyone but me? There's a lot of people in this country who believe they've been crushed by COVID, crushed by inflation, crushed because of their values, crushed because of where they live or who they are or what they believe in. And so the ad works not because it's targeted at the trans community.
Yes, that's right.
The ad works because it is they're showing you what this president would be willing to do with your money and who they would pander to if they were the commander-in-chief, and that's why it was so effective.
What Scott is saying about Americans feeling like the system isn't working for them, I think we can probably all agree that that is true, right?
Well, it's working.
People feel that.
It's
That
working.
people feel that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but and so when the other part of the conversation of the ongoing autopsy Democrats are having is about why aren't they speaking better to working class people? I mean, one of the few demographics that Kamala Harris improved on in this race were people making $100,000 or more. So wealthy people, probably more educated people, they're responding to what the Democrats are doing, and that's not enough people to win elections.
The Democrats, they were so busy actually creating policies, Catherine can talk more about them, that have actually improved the lives of working class people.
But they did talk about them.
But yeah.
I mean, they also did a lot of things for highly educated like college grads. Like, I think to Scott's point about the sort of symbolism, I don't entirely agree with your analysis of that ad. I think you make some good points. I don't entirely agree. But I think another policy that was symbolically about people other than the median voter was the student debt forgiveness, which disproportionately went to, well, first of all, to people who went to college, who are likely to have higher earnings in general, but also the way that it was structured went to a lot of people who are likely to have very high earnings, including people who are going to become doctors and lawyers and things like that. And part of the reason those policies were structured that way and were touted that way is because that's who was staffing this administration. There are people who went to Yale Law School who want their debt forgiven.
But look,
The Democratic Party, it has seen itself as the party of the working class, multiracial coalition. In any other country in Europe, they'd call themselves the Labor Party because it's the party of labor, right? But what's happened over the past 10 years is that non-college educated working class voters have been hemorrhaged to the Republican Party. And the Democrats have become the party of the college educated. No one would have predicted this 15 years ago. It is a massive devastation and humiliation to the self-concept of the Democratic Party, and it has to be reckoned with right now. That's what's happened. That's what just happened
But
2 days ago.
that's my point is this: we segment as Democrats how we talk to people. As a Democrat,
because we're such a diverse party.
No, because but listen, what unites us is much, much, much. Actually, we're getting less diverse by the day. If you look at where Latinos are going and African Americans, that's a problem. That's a big problem for us. That's because I would be advised as a Democratic strategist to talk to you on a particular subject, and I would be advised to talk to Abby on a very different subject, and to each of you on a different
But
subject.
we're very different.
We're not.
Yeah, we have a lot of different interests.
No, we're not. The bottom line is there's a lot more that unites us than divides us, and we start talking to people about common sense issues and common sense language rather than trying to figure out how to be too cute by half. That's how you message, and that's not how the last Democratic president who did that well was Bill Clinton.